This is your New Year's sermon in disguise. You go, wait a minute, we're already a month into the year. Yes, we are. But we're going to do it now because you got 11 months to go, and there is a better version of you waiting in the future. I love that little saying. In fact, I've got it on my computer handwritten so I can remind myself, you ain't as good as you're going to get if you keep on trying. And so we're going to talk about growing. I want to do it through relationships. And number one, I want you to think about your relationship with God, but I don't want you to think about it as separate from other relationships because the two really weave together a lot. So in the second, I want you to think about your relationship with other people. Now, we could have added a third one on there, but that just clunks things way up too much and talk about your relationship with yourself. We'll have to do that at another time. In John 17:21 through 23, that is where Jesus prayed that we would all be one. And here's our two levels. He wanted us all to be one in one another, as he and the Father are in him and us in them. So he wanted that unity to be what I'm going to call a vertical unity, and he wanted it also to be a horizontal unity. That was his prayer. And that is one of the things as Christians we aim to develop. So think about that. What would happen if you succeeded? Say just in 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, you pick a date. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a magical 12 months. But you pick a relationship or two, and that relationship actually gets better. It gets sweeter, it gets deeper, it gets more meaningful. It actually stirs a feeling of love and appreciation in your heart that had not previously been there. Now, maybe there was some there. Let's just use a little number scale. Let's say that was running at a 4, and you bump it up to a 7 or an 8. You make a significant change. How's that going to affect your life later on as we get toward the end of whatever time period you have in mind? I'll say the end of the year. And I think most of us will say, well, that'd be great. Life would be a whole lot better. I'd like that. Then I'm saying, great. Choose that. Work on that. Do it. In 2 Corinthians 9:6 and 7, he says, now this I say, that he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. Who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Each one must do just as he's purposed in his heart, not grudgingly or under compulsion. Well, that is the trick right there. For God loves a cheerful giver. So I want you to imagine a moment. You have two different guys. One has bought his little Walmart sack of seed, that little bitty packet you get for 99 cents, when they brought it out from last year's supplies. And he's got that little packet of seed. Another guy's got a 100-pound bag of seed. Now, only half of them are going to grow, because every seed you plant will not grow. There are some people out there so cold, so hard, so bitter, so wicked, so angry, I don't care what you do, it's never ever going to touch them. That seed is going to lay there and die. But let's say 50% of them grow. Now it's harvest time. Which one do you want to be? Do you want to be the guy who took his little 99-cent packet of seeds from Walmart, planted every single one of them, all 100 of them, let's say, and got a 50% return? Or you want to be the guy that had a 100-pound bag of seed, planted all of them, and got a 50% return? Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what you ought to be, right? And the only way I know to get that more abundant harvest is to sow, 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 sow. Keep sowing, just sow seed everywhere you go. And that's biblical, because Paul said, if you sow sparingly, how are you going to reap? If you want to reap bountifully, what do you got to do? Boom, it's right there. This isn't rocket science, isn't it? Isn't that great? So much of the Bible is so simple. So the two are woven together, our relationship with God and our relationship with one another. No one has seen God at any time. If we love one another, you see the connection? We're talking about God, but if we love one another, God abides in us and his love is perfected in us. And then just a little bit later, I'm still in 1 John 4. I've dropped from verse 12 down to verse 20. He says, the one who does not love his brother whom he has seen, well, how can he love God who he's not seen? You can't separate relationships with other people from your relationship with God. How we treat other people is just vitally connected. Now, I realize that every relationship is going to vary a little bit, but we're going to work every one of them as a Christian should work them with pleasing God in mind. That's going to be the number one priority. So it's our spiritual training. That's all it is. And most of your spiritual training, big chunk of it, is going to come from how you deal with your relationships. In Matthew 25:37, That's where he does the story about I was in prison and you visited me. I was sick and you came. I was hungry, so on and so forth. And they say, Lord, when did we see you sick and hungry? And he said, inasmuch as you did it unto one of the least of these, my brethren, you did it unto me. And there again is our interrelationship. It's not just me and God and y'all don't count. It's all of us together. There's a level of, I don't know if you'll call it unity or what words you want to use there. But in that, we learn that it is more blessed to give than receive. That's Acts 20:35. And once you learn that experientially, I don't want it just to be a classroom thing that we learned. I want it to be an experience. And once that becomes an experience, and I've got a little harvest, I'm more willing to plant again. And I'm more willing to plant a little bit more and a little bit more. And the harvest grows and the harvest grows. In Colossians 3:23, hadn't hit this one in 2 or 3 weeks now. That's whatever you do, do it heartily as unto the Lord. And I want to put that back in context very quickly. The context there is quite simply, he's talking to slaves. And you go, well, look at it in context, please do. And he says, okay, you slaves, whatever you do, I want you to do it as you're doing to the Lord. Now, I point that out because what does a slave do? Well, slaves did all kinds of things, right? Some slaves did the cooking. Some slaves made the bed. Some slaves worked the field. Some slaves shoveled out the stall while the cattle were out in the field. Some slaves took care of, I'm going to use an old-fashioned term, but back then this was very real. Some slaves took care of the slop jar. You see what I'm saying? Some slaves washed feet. And he said, whatever you do it like you're doing it for the Lord. Now, when we make that connection, then all of this starts to come together. But if we could think our relationship with God is different than our relationship with other people, then we're going to miss it. Now, everybody, every single everybody has a role. There's nobody that's left out of this. Or even as the body is one and yet has many members, all the members of the body, though they are many, are one, so also is Christ. Everybody. Everybody brings something to the table. Now, it may be something different. Don't worry about that. It's potluck may not be the best analogy, but let's use it. Let's imagine we're having a potluck and everybody brought roast beef. Well, I like roast beef. How about you? But I also like corn and green beans, maybe some homemade yeast rolls, and afterwards I like some carrot cake. And you get the idea. But if all you've got lined up on the potluck is pot roast, okay, just going to be a little disappointing. Everybody brings something different to the table. And so we don't compare it. So I had some good pot roast. Now I finally got down to the dessert, which some people, of course, say you ought to do dessert first because life's uncertain. But anyway, I'm not comparing the dessert to the main dish. And I'm not comparing the green beans to the corn. And I'm not comparing the corn to the homemade yeast rolls. You don't do that. That's just like, no, that doesn't work that way. Okay? You bring what you bring to the table because everybody brings something to the table and it's going to be okay. Now, people do this and we do it all the time. This is absolutely true. We go, well, but somebody's better than I am. Well, duh. How arrogant would you be? Let me hit that one again. How stinking ugly arrogant would you be to go, I am the best. Can't nobody do it like I do it. I am number one. Yuck. That's ugly. There are people that do anything we do better than we do it. Go look around. There's better people at leading prayers. There's better preachers. There's better song leaders. There's better Bible class teachers. There's better people that can do better in the nursing home or they're better visiting in the hospital. They're just better than you. Well, somebody's better than me. I'll just sit here and do nothing. No. You take what you have and you bring it to the table. So the parable of the talents, you had the 1 talent man, you had the 2 talent man, you had the 5 talent man. God did not expect the 2 talent man to bring a 5 talent performance to the table, did he? In fact, the 2 talent man brought a 2 talent performance. And what did God say? Well done. You've been faithful over a few things. I'm going to bless you. Now, the one talent man was not expected to bring a 2-talent performance, was he? He was expected to bring a 1-talent performance. That's all he had to bring. He brought something less. And how did that work out for him? God said, you wicked and lazy servant. The point is, God's only expecting of us what we have the talent to do. Our trick is to be honest with ourselves about what our talent is, because human nature, because number one, we're just kind of lazy, that's the flesh, and we like to instantly excuse ourselves. Oh, I could never do that. Mark mentioned in the announcements our duty list, and they're there, and the men usually are a little bit slow at filling them out. And now and then, on rare occasion, I'll approach somebody and say, what do you think about? And they go, oh, I couldn't do that. Now, we're in an odd spot here because you're volunteers. If this was the military and you didn't have a whole lot of options, I could say a whole lot more other things. But since we're dealing with voluntary people who, if I tick you off, you don't have to come back, I got to watch a real narrow line here, right? Because I can't preach to an empty auditorium. But the people who instantly go, no, I couldn't do that. Next question, how many times you tried? Well, I've never tried because I couldn't do that. What happened if you did try? Well, I don't know because I can't do that. What if you tried and you did do that? I'm getting off target. Let me get back here to where we're going. So Peter, he stumbled and bumbled all over the place. Peter is one of our probably most accounts, Peter is the number one character next to Christ in the New Testament. Who do we have more information about him bumbling and stumbling and goofing up and falling? Who do we have more information about on that? Nobody. Peter in the New Testament, there's not a bigger bumbler, stumbler, goof up, make a bad decision, be impetuous and all that stuff. He's number one. He's got it. And yet at the same time, Peter, by most accounts, is the number one person in the New Testament next to Christ. Now, some people would say number 3, they like Paul better, but, now we're down to quibbling a little bit. And what I'm trying to tell you is that he stumbled and bumbled his way forward. That's the way it works. He brought what he had to the table, and he kept bringing what he had to the table, knowing that in time he would keep learning and growing. So in the school of relationships that we have, because this is where everything happens, it's confusing and it's so enjoyable. And it is frustrating. I want to pull my hair out. Can't get a hold of mine anymore, but I want to pull my hair out. And yet, it's the happiest moments of life. This is the oddity you deal with as you're going through the school of relationships, and you learn, how can I get deeper? How can I get better? How can I grow more and more? Well, you have to get outside your comfort zone. There's just no way around it. This is the way relationships work. We're talking husband, wife, family, extended friend, co-workers. Somehow or another, somebody's got to open the door. Hebrews 5:12, it says, by this time you ought to be teachers. And the text is not complimentary because they had just drifted back and needed the baby bottle all over again. And he goes on to say, it's by reason of experience, having your senses exercised, that you learn, and that there's a learning curve there, to discern both good and evil. So what you do is you learn to embrace the awkwardness. Sometimes if I'm going into an area and I'm not really sure how to handle it, especially when I'm across the gender lines, if I may, I'll preface it this way. You got to understand, I'm just a guy. I don't think like you women think. So if this sounds stupid, I'm sorry. And then take your next step forward. And sometimes I get, no, that wasn't stupid. And sometimes I can tell by the look on the face, that was kind of stupid, wasn't it? But how are you going to move forward if all you do is hide in the corner and don't go anywhere? So in Matthew 14:28, I'm not going to look up the passage, but this is where Peter walked on the water. And so I'm going to ask, did Peter fail? And most people go, well, duh, of course he failed. He started sinking. I'm like, let's think that one out a little bit further. Are you telling me that the disciples that stayed in the boat, they're the ones who succeeded? Mm-mm. They didn't succeed either, did they? Reminds me of the saying, the only people who don't make mistakes are the people that don't do anything. And so that's the guys in the boat, that's who they are. They didn't do nothing. They just hung in the boat and did nothing. Well, that's a failure too. Peter had his moment of failure, absolutely. But is he a total failure? Absolutely not. Of the 12 original disciples, of the disciples, period, as far as I know, how many knew what it was like to step out of a boat, put your foot on top of water, and feel that water beneath your foot solid enough to stand on it? Which of the disciples managed to take some steps on the water? Which one? Oh, the one we call the failure. Isn't that curious? Which of the disciples knew what it was like to be in a precarious situation where things look like I'm getting ready to die, reach out their hand and say, Lord, save me, and feel the warmth of his hand take hold their hand and pull them up to safety? Oh, I guess he's a failure, isn't he? No, he wasn't perfect, I get that. But he got out of his comfort zone and he stepped into an area he wasn't certain about. And he learned some things the 11 sitting in the boat will never know experientially. They'll never ever have any more knowledge of that than you and I have when we read it in Matthew 14. Peter knows stuff we don't. Why? Because he's the one that got out of the boat. And that makes all the difference. So, God doesn't need us to bring our strength along. That's one of the mistakes we make. He needs us to trust him and learn to bumble and stumble forward. James 1 says, count it all joy when you fall into various trials. And he says, this is how you reach perfection, if you read the whole passage there. And one of the mistakes that we make in relationships and other places in life is look for that place of safety. Find me my storm shelter, so to speak. Let me hide in the bunker. Let me lock down and never, ever, ever take a risk. And we'll never learn the lessons of James 1, 2 through 4. Count it all joy when you fall into various trials. Because this testing is going to lead to perfection. And God doesn't need you to bring powerful, omniscient, all-power perfection. He needs you to bring your willingness to trust him and learn. So we have in Proverbs 27:17, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. So I'm talking about relationships primarily, right? Yes, that's the way it works. And then somebody rubs me the wrong way. Well, he just rubs me the wrong way. Well, if somebody just rubs you the wrong way, you ought to hit your knees and say thank you to God and give some praise and say, grant me some wisdom, James 1:5, so I can understand what you're trying to teach me here, because my Bible said, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And so if they're rubbing me the wrong way, somebody's getting sharpened. Both of us may be getting sharpened. But that's what Christians do. But there are people who are so scared to death of being rubbed the wrong way. They will avoid contact with other people like the plague, and they will avoid meaningful contact like crazy. It's just absurd. So we're social creatures. We want to be seen, heard, and celebrated. I have some oversimplifications in my psychology. They are oversimplifications, I guarantee you. So let me give you three of them real quick because they're just that simple. Inside every woman, Matt has heard this enough, she can finish it for me. Inside every woman is a little girl that wants to be assured she's cute. Now, ladies, if you totally disagree with that, you can catch me before you. Inside every man's a little boy that wants to be assured he's doing it right. And I could preach on those for a minute, but I won't. And then one of them that we share in common. No, I got to go back to the other one. You know why men are so stinking scared to get up here in front of people and open up a pre-printed, sitting on the foyer list of announcements? Because I might make a mistake. Inside every man is a little boy that is scared to death he's going to do something wrong. And he'd rather sit in the dugout than get up and take a chance and get laughed at. Hallelujah, Peter wasn't that man. He got out of the boat, walked on the water, showed us how you could totally have your moment of failure, get back up and become one of the most influential people in the whole New Testament. Okay, side sermon over. All of us share this in common. At some level, we want to be seen, heard, and celebrated because we are social creatures. Come on, computer. It's almost time to restart. I'm going to say not now. That was bad timing. Come on, next. Pardon me. We'll take a prayer break here. I disconnect this thing from the. Let's try that. You just preached. There it is. That's right. And it works right. Oh, y'all don't hate me, do you? Oh, you quit and go. So, what we do is we just want to treat other people like we want to be treated. They're just simple acts, just little greetings is all it may take. I did have some things I wanted to say about Gen Z. I'll keep it really, really short and have us run out of time. I read an article just 2 weeks ago. Gen Z are being fired within the first 6 months of employment at a rate no previous time has been fired. In fact, current employers are looking at Gen Z graduates going, no, I don't think so. Why? Because Gen Z, for many, many cases, not all of them, haven't learned how to say hello, thank you, yes, sir, you're welcome. The little skills. We've had Gen Z walk through here. I'll be real careful not calling names. I go, hey, how's it going? Man, had I done that to an adult when I was a kid, my mom would have grabbed my ear, probably yanked it off. I'd been outside and I'd been getting a dressing down that I don't even want to remember, right? And Gen Z doesn't know how to relate with people on a simple level. Like, hey, good to see you. That's a nice haircut you got. Just little stuff. That's so much of what we're talking about. So we're gonna, through love, we're gonna serve one another. We're gonna give. What did Christ say? It'll be given back to you. It's going to be packed down. It's going to be measured, overflowing. I want you to discover the joy in learning the relationship rules, and there are rules, and if you're not studying it, you're behind the 8 ball. You need to get up on top of that. It is more blessed to give than to receive. You can't learn these lessons in isolation. Now, you don't have to do it with 100 people at one time, but there has to be that little group where you do. And you go, yeah, but I don't. No, forget it. God's ways aren't our ways. His thoughts aren't our thoughts. He does things different. When we get in the school of relationships, sometimes it's going to be awesome. It's going to be wonderful. Other times, you're going to be, if I ever see them again, it'll be too soon. You know, that's the way it works. And so I don't really want a lot of intellect. I want experience. That's really what I'm looking for. So learning to give is part of bringing that better version of yourself to life. Healthy relationships, of course, they're going to set the stage. That's basically what we're going to do. We're not going to demand, pressure, manipulate. That really doesn't work. You really want to nurture and cultivate and inspire, kind of set an environment where people can grow. There's some stuff to be nuanced there, but we don't have time. If people wanted to change, they would. End of story. They're not changing. They don't want to change. Don't overcomplicate it. Just be okay. I'm going to be polite. And when they're ready to change, I'll be here for them. If they don't ever want to change, hey, they get to do what they want to do. Healthy church family does that, gives folks that healthy opportunity to be seen, heard, and celebrated. And folks, that's fertilizer right there. We just all love that to some point. I know we got a little variation, but we all do. So we grow together. Everything is connected. We're interwoven together. And that's what we do. We're not autonomous. We're not independent. We're a symphony, which is neat. That means, you got your oboe, you got your fiddle, violin, I guess, if we're talking symphony. You got your cello, you got all these different instruments, and they're all unique, absolutely. But at the same time, they all come together as one, and you have this wonderful symphony. That's us. We each have our unique thing we bring to the table. And if we do it right, we have this beautiful symphony. We have something that's just wonderful. So our 7 primary points, and I got 2 minutes less. We'll hit these real quick. Loving others is loving God, because that other person is one of his children too. Now, whether they're saved or lost, that's still Acts 7, about 17:26. We're all his offspring. So everyone has a role to play. Bring what you got to the table. Don't worry about what it is. It's going to get outside your comfort zone. If you're looking to be comfort, now you can stagnate in the comfort zone, but you're not going to grow much in one. We're social creatures. Here's what I want you to really try to do. Just take this point. Seen, heard, and celebrated. Are you married? Then I want you to think of your mate. Sometime this week, maybe daily if you're real smart, I'm going to see them, hear them, celebrate them. Average marriage couple, according to stats I heard today, communicates 4 minutes a day. Whoa, I hope you're way above average. I'm going to give her 5. May give her 20, right? Discover the joy of giving, because once you start getting the harvest back, you're going to go, hey, let me try that again. Let me try that. Let me plant 2 seeds this time. Inspire others as much as you can. And understand, we grow together. If I can get you to grow, I'm growing. You get me to grow, you're growing. That's just the way it works. So there's a better version of you waiting in the future. And it is. Question is, will that better version get to come to life? And the beautiful thing about that is that it's entirely 100% in your hands. Kind of like that. So are you washed in the blood? Have you got the start? Have you put Christ on in baptism? If you have, you know how this goes. Stay the course. If you hadn't, it's time to make a change. While together we stand and sing.